Please be seated. It has been my privilege to moderate, MC the Remembrance Day service for the last 14 years. To watch it grow, to watch students and families become more involved. And in those past Remembrance Day services, I've shared a lot of numbers and a lot of statistics that count the lives of those who have given their ultimate to Canada. On one of them, I listed every single person who had received the Victoria Cross, the highest Medal of Honor in Canada. We have looked at how often the Canadian military has distinguished itself in the many, many different engagements they were involved in and the losses suffered in them. And just a few, and I stress just a very few, are battles of Gravenstaffel Ridge and St. Julian, 6,064 wounded and killed. Vimy Ridge, 10,602 wounded and killed. Amiens, 9,074 wounded and killed. Canal du Nord and Cambrai, 13,672 wounded and killed. Dieppe, 1,413 wounded and killed, 1,946 captured. Juno Beach, 1,200 wounded and killed. Breskin's Pocket, 600 wounded and killed. As I said, this is just a very small collection of the engagements and battles in which Canadians, before we were recognized as Canada and afterwards, have been engaged in. These are just a few of the battles from World War II. They do not include the other battles and engagements. It does not speak of Afghanistan, Kuwait, and Iraq, and others still going on in our world that our Canadian soldiers, men and women, still are part of. Today I wish to share with you a poem you may have heard about. It's a poem about an engagement that lasted all of maybe 10 minutes. This engagement happened in the Battle of Balaclava, 1854, during the Crimean War. The Crimean War happened in 1853 to 1856. This battle did not include Canadians. This poem describes a skirmish between the British and the Russians. But I believe the poem gives a picture of the character of the men and women who are in the military, the RCMP and other police forces, the fire rescue departments, both paid and volunteer, and the numerous other first responders in our country. All of these men and women give to others with the knowledge that they will enter situations dangerous to themselves. This poem does not describe a battle of victory for our allies. You might ask the question, why should we be interested in a poem that speaks of a failed attack made famous by a poem? I'm not here to speak of the reasons for it being such a terrible choice at the time. I don't wish to explain what led up to it. I also do not want to look at the final outcome. I want you and I to consider the character of the soldiers who followed their leader. Though the danger we may see varies today, and the final cost may not be so easily seen and recognized as a flag draped over caskets on the news. This poem is called The Charge of the Light Brigade. It was written by Alfred Lord Tennyson in 1855 and chronicles the charge which carries the same name in that Battle of Balaclava. This poem has 6 stanzas, and it goes this way. Half a league, half a league, half a league onward, all in the valley of death, rode the 600. Forward, the light brigade, charge for the guns, he said. Into the valley of death rode the 600. Forward, the light brigade, was there a man dismayed? Not though the soldier knew someone had blundered. Theirs not to make reply, theirs not to reason why, theirs but to do and die. Into the valley of death rode the 600. Cannon to right of them, cannon to left of them, cannon in front of them, volleyed and thundered. Stormed at with shot and shell, boldly they rode and well, into the jaws of death, into the mouth of hell, rode the 600. Flashed all their sabers bare, flashed as they turned in air, sabering the gunners there, charging an army while all the world wondered. Plunged in the battery smoke, right through the line they broke. Cossack and Russian reeled from the saber stroke, shattered and sundered. Then they rode back, but not the 600. Cannon to right of them, cannon to left of them, cannon behind them, volleyed and thundered, stormed at with shot and shell, while horse and hero fell. They that had fought so well came through the jaws of death, back from the mouth of hell. All that was left of them, left of 600. When can their glory fade? Oh, the wild charge they made. All the world wondered. Honor the charge they made. Honor the light brigade. Noble 600. The history of this charge, the fact that it was the British charging towards prepared and dug-in Russian troops, that the battle is still studied by military historians and strategists, is not why I share that with you today. I share it because it gives a great illustration of the character of the men and women we remember today. These are men and women who believe in what they do, why they do it, and are prepared to sacrifice many things in their personal lives to do what they do. We do not come together on this date to celebrate the wars, the engagements, the good or the bad, the right or wrong, or any or all of them. We come together to remember the men and women who gave of their country, to their country, their region, and their community, many of whom gave their life for what they believed. That is what this poem says to me. It shows the character of men and women who enter situations which have the possibility of more than a story when they get home, but of situations where they themselves become the stories we remember on this day. Today, we once again remember all those who gave so others do not have to. We remember in order to remind ourselves and others of the danger we ourselves fight against. That danger, for you and I, for us, is summed up in 3 simple words: lest we forget. I'd like to call up Mayor Rob Fraser to share.
Thank you for that. On behalf of our council in Taylor, I'd like to thank everybody for choosing to tune in from whatever media platform you may be using. We're streaming today live on Facebook and YouTube. Every year on November 11th, we gather to honor the sacrifices made by soldiers everywhere to preserve the peace and protect our democracy. Only this year is different. For the first time since Remembrance Day was initiated, the public is being discouraged from attending in person. Our council felt it was very important to continue our traditional ceremony on this day and decided to try a virtual ceremony. I would like to recognize that the ceremony is being held on the traditional territory of the Daneza, who share the land with us according to Treaty 8, signed over 100 years ago. I also want to recognize the First Nation soldiers who fought side by side with their neighbors. With us at the Taylor Hall and the cenotaph are a few guests in the Taylor Fire Rescue Color Guard. Remembrance Day Ceremony in Taylor has been growing over the years, and it is a little disheartening to be delivering an address to a room that is usually quite full, but not today. I will still issue my annual challenge to those of you who are watching. Every year I ask you to do at least one thing today that teaches someone the importance of remembering. It is our generation's responsibility to pass along the importance of remembering the sacrifices made by so many Canadians, sacrifices that allow us to live in freedom, free to make the choices to live productive, meaningful lives. Freedom does not come free, and our payment to those who made the ultimate sacrifice is remembering. This day also gives us an opportunity to thank those who are still making sacrifices for us every day for our freedom and safety. Thank you to the men and women who defend us around the world, here and at home. Thank you to the RCMP who put their lives on the line to protect us every day. This ceremony also gives me the opportunity to thank our very own Taylor Fire and Rescue for the dedication and hard work that they put in to protect us, our homes, and our property. We're very grateful for your service. Every year, as part of my comments, I like to pass on a little history to help us remember some of the sacrifices made by Canadians. Last year, I spoke about a little town in Italy, Ortona, where on the outskirts of the town is a little sign that says, "This is a Western Canadian town." That sign is there to honor sacrifices Canadians made to liberate it. This year commemorates the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II. Unfortunately, the current world situation is preventing us from really giving it its due. This story I have today has a bit of a local connection. 75 years ago, in the early part of the year, our Canadian forces had been given the task of pushing the German forces out of the northeast Netherlands. Prior to this, Canadians and Allied troops had pushed out of France after the D-Day landings, up along the coast into Belgium, through Belgium and into the southern part of the Netherlands. While the Canadian advance continued north, the British began to eastward advance towards Germany. In a classic military pincer maneuver, the combined forces of the Allied armies looked to cut off the German troops, preventing a retreat into Germany. In October 1944, the Canadians fought a brutal campaign to clear the Scheldt River estuary, leading to the critical port of Antwerp. Canadians suffered 6,367 casualties, killed, wounded, or missing, but cleared the area around the port. With the port secured, the Canadians could turn east and move towards Germany as well, knowing that the newly secured port would provide a supply chain for the push into the Rhineland. Winter set in and fighting slowed. Canadian commanders began to plan a move to cut off the remaining enemy troops in the Netherlands. Hitler did not want to give up the northeastern and eastern Holland because it was too close to the border. In April 1945, the Allies started the offensive in the northern Netherlands to drive the enemy back over the Rhine and to bring about the eventual defeat of Germany. With this backstory, our story begins. I was able to research some documents that reference a particular bridge crossing that is the focal point of today's story. I found an article written by Ross Munro, war correspondent for the Canadian Press, titled, "Canadians Join with the British for Arnhem Battle, Bridgehead Driven Over the 20th Canal." He wrote, "Driving northward from the eastward end of the 20th Canal, Canadian tanks and infantry today advanced 5 miles into the large Netherlands town of Almelo, where fighting is underway in the town against German machine gunners and snipers. The gains were made from a bridgehead established at Delden. Another bridgehead has been driven across the canal further west as the Canadians fashioned a trap for some 50,000 Germans in Western Holland. The first tanks crossed the canal atop locked gates even before the bridge could be built. Opposition thinned out in this area, but at the western end of the canal, near Almen, other Canadian forces were engaged stiff fighting along the perimeter of the western bridgehead." These next references that I found came from unit logs written at the time. 1st Battalion, the Essex Scottish Regiment, Canadian Army, April 2nd, 1945. In the afternoon, an armed recce went out to get information on the bridges over small streams and mainly a bridge across the 20th Canal. The patrol was fired on and had to return 2 wounded casualties. At 1500 hours, the CL went to brigade to get further orders regarding the operation, the crossing of the canal. 8th Canadian Reconnaissance Regiment, April 2nd, 1945. We arrived at our present position at 1600 hours. During the day, A and B squadrons were probing along the 20th Canal, trying to seize a bridge intact, but Jerry blew them all. One in particular was blown up with our troops within 300 yards. 10th Canadian Armed Division, April 2nd, 1945. Evening found B Squadron on the south side of the 20th Canal, awaiting crossing. 1st Battalion, Royal Regiment of Canada, April 2nd, 1945. The battalion moved off at 0600 hours to approach the 20th Canal and reach the assembly area at 1100 hours. B Company moved to the remnants of a bridge to see if a crossing was possible, but reported the undertaking impossible. The operations group for the crossing was held at 1700. At 1830, A Company was to cross in 18-man assault boats, followed by D and C Company with B Company to establish a firm bridgehead. You can see from the record that a bridge across the 20th Canal was a necessity to advance troops forward past that point. Rubber assault boats were being used, and you cannot move an army with rubber boats. April 3rd, 1945, the 1st Battalion, Royal Regiment of Canada. B Company reported enemy digging in on their right. 3-inch mortar fire was brought to bear on an enemy position. Enemy troops were reported moving northwest at 9:55 hours. During the night, a Class 40 raft was built by the engineers and is in operation, bringing troops by 1000 hours. The brigade visited attack headquarters to tell of a bridge being built at position. The Essex Scots and Royal Highland Light Infantry to move across tonight. Company met company commands at A Company to outline ops come to the suggestion that improvements be made in our position. Battalion area was subject to heavy shelling starting at 1400. Enemy mounted several counterattacks in A and C Company areas, but were held off with a number of enemy killed. Engineers had to halt work on the bridge at approximately 1730 hours as shelling was heavy and accurate. The raft was smashed by direct hits at 2100 hours. The crossing was held up till the raft was repaired. Our artillery and tanks took over the enemy guns at 2200 hours, and shortly after the raft was repaired, and the light infantry continued to cross. Strong counterattack was driven off at 2230 hours. Casualties today, 3 killed, 4 missing, 23 wounded. 8th Canadian Reconnaissance Regiment, 3rd of April 1945. Cloudy with slight rain. B Squadron is trying to pass their people over the 20th Canal now, but it will probably take some time as they are using a raft. In the afternoon, B Squadron got about half the squad over the 20th Canal and bumped into the enemy 20 minutes later. Unfortunately, lost 4 vehicles, and at 2000 hours, 6 men were still missing, some of them believed to be wounded. As contact had been lost during this, it was still unconfirmed. Jerry sent in 4 tanks at approximately 2100 hours, and they were reported as Panthers. The Fort Garry's knocked out at least one, but are not sure of the second. C Squadron have returned under command of the 3rd Canadian Division. They put on a damn good show by taking more prisoners in one day than the rest of the 3rd Division. Fourth of April, 1945. The day started out with our infantry in a hell of a mix-up. However, with a little time, The recce still straightened out, and the situation for them, all we need is a bridge. A and B squadrons over the 20th Canal now at 2000 hours. Squadron is to cross tomorrow morning at first light. I think it goes to show that that crossing in that canal was very important. The task of building that Bailey Bridge, which was eventually used on the 4th of April, fell to the 2nd Canadian Field Company engineers. This dangerous undertaking was performed under fire from the enemy and pressure from Canadian Command to support those troops who had made it across in rafts, who were also facing constant counterattack. This final reference that I'll read is written by Lieutenant General G.G. Simmons, Canadian Forces in the Netherlands. On the 2nd of April 1945, 4 Canadian Infantry Brigade with 2nd Canadian Field Company Royal Canadian Engineers in support had made an assault crossing of the 20th Canal. The crossing was made at Almen, west of Lochem in Holland. On the morning of the 3rd of April, 2nd Canadian Field Company Royal Canadian Engineers received instructions to build a floating Bailey Bridge over the canal so that the troops across could be maintained and continue their advance. Corporal Albert Thomas Mould was placed in charge of the bridge construction. Work commenced at 0600 hours on the 3rd of April under scattered enemy fire. By noon, the fire had become intense and extremely accurate. The work had to cease. 3 times during the day, Corporal Mould got his men on the job, and in each instance, they were driven to cover by the intensity of enemy fire. At midnight, he again rallied his tired men and under heavy shell fire commenced work. The shelling continued at intervals all night, but in spite of this, the bridge was completed by 9:10 on the 4th of April. Corporal Mould remained on the job all night, encouraging his men by his own example, and a great deal of credit for the completion of this hazardous job was due to his energy and persistence. The bridge was the first crossing made over the 20th Canal, and its construction permitted the entire 2nd Canadian Infantry Division, the 3rd Canadian Infantry Division, and supporting arms to cross, which ultimately resulted in cutting off of the West Holland and the German retreat. By his example and personal courage, Corporal Mould contributed greatly to the success of the operation. His bravery and devotion to duty will always remain an inspiration and a constant source of pride to his men, and his actions are in keeping with the highest tradition of the Corps of Royal Canadian Engineers. This citation was read as background to Corporal Alan Mould receiving the Bronze Cross of Netherlands. The Bronze Cross is for bravery and devotion of duty and was presented by Her Royal Highness Queen Juliana of the Netherlands. The local connection? Corporal Mould has a nephew living in Fort Nelson, Doug Mould. Doug is Councillor Turnbull's uncle. The family continues to honor veterans with pride, as we all do. I'm a traditionalist when it comes to Remembrance Day, but this year has been very, very different. This year, another battle is being fought by the men and women in our public health system. There may not be any bullets flying, but many of them are being placed in real danger to fight this coronavirus. The danger was particularly real at the start when very little was known about how to treat patients and to protect themselves. Some medical personnel lost their lives. I would like to acknowledge their sacrifice to our society this year. Please give them some space in your thoughts and prayers today. I'd like to finish by thanking everyone who participated in today's ceremony. So the Fort St. John RCMP are here, always providing their protection. Our Taylor Fire and Rescue Services and the Color Guard. Pastor Wally Pullman, always a great job, as usual. The Fort St. John Legion Branch 102. Sound in Town, Russell and team for helping us to put the presentation together. The Northern Lights Youth Choir, thank you very much for your songs today. Parks and Facilities led by Mike Farquharson. And finally, our Community Services Department, Sherry Maycock, who really put all of this together and organized it for us today. So everybody who's out there, please feel free to come and place your poppy on the cenotaph or a wreath if you have one this afternoon when there's fewer people. And please maintain your social distancing and be safe out there. Thank you very much.
Too soon to leave this earth. How could all your work be done? Ash to ash and dust to dust. Seemed to me you just begun. When grief invades my soul, there's comfort in a prayer I find. Though these candles honor you, they burn for those you left behind. I'll sing for you because I need to. Right now this is all I know. I'll sing so we will not forget you. I will sing you home. I will sing you home. This is our prayer for you, and maybe someday we will know. Que votre sacrifice se souviendra toujours. I'll sing for you because I need to. Right now this is all I know. I'll sing so we will not forget you. I will sing you home. I will sing you home. Ash to ash and dust to dust. There is nothing left undone.
I'll sing for you because I need to.
Right now this is all I know. I'll sing so we will not forget you. I will sing you home. I will sing you home. I'll sing for you because I need to. Right now this is all I know. I'll sing so we will not forget you. I will sing
come back. You come back by Christmas.
I will, I promise.
Good morning. We're here today, some of us in person, many of us online and virtually, to remember and pay tribute to those who paid the ultimate sacrifice, to commemorate those who continue to serve and provide us with the freedoms that we have today, the freedoms that allow us to safely live out our lives and have experiences that so many men and women have not had. 2020 has been a year for persistence, and for many of us, it's been a year of first experiences. The format of this Remembrance Day ceremony is a perfect example of that. We're not able to gather together as we normally would with 200 to 300 people packing this hall in person as a result of the ongoing pandemic that Mayor Fraser mentioned. But here we are, still gathering in remembrance, whether it be online or in person, all across Canada. Our experiences change over time and they shape our beliefs and values. I'm honored to be here today with you to share some of my experiences with Remembrance Day and to share with you a bit about what Remembrance Day means to me. Like so many young Canadians and millennials, my early memories of Remembrance Day started in elementary school. Lining up single file, making our way down a long hallway behind our teachers, on our way to a gymnasium where we would sing songs, recite poems, and hear stories of the historic wars that gave us our freedom. These experiences have been different this year, but thanks to our exceptional teachers, our children have still had the opportunity to learn about Remembrance Day and the sacrifices made by so many for our freedoms. As I got older, I became involved with community organizations, and every year I marched in parades alongside Beavers, Cubs, Scouts, choirs, brownies, guides, bands, pathfinders, outfitters, cadets, you name it, everybody came out, and we were there for the same reason. Members of service organizations like the Rotarians, Lions Club, Kin Club members, Masons, Elks, everybody was there. Veterans and active service members, and I must not forget all of our first responders and our emergency services personnel. Every year, my family would visit the Cenotaph in Vancouver with my grandfather, who served over 30 years in the Canadian Armed Forces. He rarely wore his uniform when we went to Remembrance Day ceremonies. Remembrance Day wasn't about him. It wasn't about the many medals that he'd earned. For him, it was simply a time to reflect on the importance of the sacrifices of all the men and women in our armed forces. For me, every year on Remembrance Day, I think of my grandfather, his career, and his service to our country and to other countries around the world. My grandfather, Colonel Neil Alexander Robertson, lived by his words a mainly military life. As military service members can attest, family life is centered mostly around your career, and your career was and is centered around the interests of the forces. Families moved from posting to posting across Canada and around the world. For my mother and my two uncles, this meant moving 13 times before they graduated from high school. For my grandmother, this meant that her husband was away, posted in Korea at the time, when their first son, my Uncle Wayne, was born in Fort St. John. The sacrifices of our servicemen and women and their dedication to us all is shared by their families, and for this we must be thankful. Fast forward to today, my family, like many others in Taylor and across the Peace region, are watching this ceremony online and at home. We all have the opportunity to reflect on what Remembrance Day means to us, and I encourage those of you who can to visit the cenotaph here in Taylor, leave a poppy, say a prayer, and say thank you. Whether it was the First World War, the Second World War, the Korean War, or the many peacekeeping missions of the 70s, 80s, or 90s, or the war in Afghanistan to the ongoing conflicts in the Middle East, Canadian servicemen and women rise to the occasion, step forward, put their lives on the line, they put their lives on hold, and they put their families' lives on hold for others. For this, we must all be thankful. We live in a world of uncertainty where conflict and extremism can drag us down. We live in a world where the cancel culture has led to some to tear down statues, deface memorials, and question the purpose of Remembrance Day. Even wearing poppies has come under fire in recent weeks. We must learn from the past so that we do not repeat it. We must always remember the sacrifices of those who came before us, and we must always remember to say thank you in reflection and appreciation. I'm here as a first responder, along with many other volunteers from the Taylor Fire and Rescue Service. As the scope and events of Remembrance Day have changed over the years, our resolve to remember has not. We have this opportunity to thank those who serve on our behalf. We have this opportunity to reflect on the sacrifices that so many have come before us have made. We have the obligation to remember and thank all those who continue to sacrifice and serve today so that we can have the freedoms that we enjoy. I will end by asking this question: what are each of us able to do in our lives to honor the fallen? What can we do today to honor them? In this time, in this era, it's important to uplift one another, support our courageous leaders, and step up where and when needed, and above all, be kind to one another, a message we've heard many times over the past several months. These are some basic things that we can do to honor those who gave their lives so that we could have the freedoms that we enjoy today. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak with you today, lest we forget.
Northern Lights Youth Choir has a couple of numbers that they will share with us now.
Morning, Northern Lights Youth Choir is singing Jesus today. One is Stoda Nobis Pacem, which in Latin very simply means give us peace. And the other piece is written by Holocaust survivor Inga Orbacher, who wrote deliberately to give life and voice to those who did not survive while we remember.
Oh
It's important that we teach our children, our grandchildren, that there was a cost, and still is, to what we enjoy today. To let them know that though it sometimes seems hard to see the difference between battles in Dieppe or Vimy Ridge or earlier, see what difference they make to our lives today. It is important for us to remember and to let them know that there was a cost that brought us to our freedom that we enjoy today. That finishes our indoor part. Those who are joining us on the Facebook and the YouTube channel for the District of Taylor, please remain with us as we prepare to head outside, and we will be partaking in the laying of the wreaths upon the cenotaph. So with that, just stay with us as we take a few moments to get organized. The fire department themselves, they will be laying the wreaths. We will not be laying the wreaths individually. They will be laid by the fire department. And in heading out there, we will have the individuals who are the color guard coming. They will come and grab and get a hold of the flags. It's probably not the best way to put it, but they will come and gather the flags up, and they will lead out, followed by Mayor Rob Fraser, then the fire department, who will collect the wreaths that they are laying on behalf of all the various individuals who have asked for one to be there. So those here, please remain seated until the color guard starts to lead out, and then follow the mayor and the fire department. Meet us outside, and in just a few minutes, we will begin the laying of the wreaths and the closing of the ceremony out there. Thank you.
in memory of veterans. Mayor Rob Fraser, District of Taylor, in honor of all veterans. District of Taylor Council, in honor of all veterans. Councillor Betty Ponto, in honor of all fallen and all who served in conflicts. District of Taylor Firefighters Association, in memory of retired Captain Brian Davey. District of Taylor Fire Rescue, in honor of fallen first responders. Taylor Fire Rescue, in memory of Gavin Holmes, Taylor resident, distinguished veteran, and longtime friend of the Taylor Fire and Rescue. Pastor Wally Pullman and Marnie Pullman, in honor of Gordon Pullman and David Freeman, veterans. First, Fort St. John Scout Group, in memory of all veterans. Ed and Josie Fernelli, in memory of June Cochran, Flying Officer, RCAFC, and Roy Cochran, Lance, RCAF. Ed and Josie Fernelli, in memory and honor of those who never returned, and those who never returned the same. School District 60, in honor of all who have served. Baldonnel Women's Institute in memory of all veterans. Norma Baudouin in memory of Giovanni Venera and Bartholomew Venera veterans. Ken and Sandra Jones, Matthew and Lori Edgar, in memory of Colonel Neil Alexander Robertson. John and Kathy Murphy, in honor of Steve Millar and all veterans. Heavenly Father, we thank you that we have this opportunity to remember those who gave so much. We thank you that we can include so many different individuals, men and women of character, who willingly head in a different direction than most people run. For our military, our RCMP and varied police forces, our fire rescue, and our first responders. Father, may you be with them in the difficult times that they have on the individual calls, as they remember, and those that we come to remember who no longer walk this world with us. Go with us today. We thank you for that. We thank you for this opportunity. In your heavenly and gracious name. Amen. If you care to, you can take a moment to drop a poppy on the cenotaph yourself. We thank you for joining us for the ceremony today in remembrance. God bless.